Chapter 5, An Unexpected Invitation. The days that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, deadlines, and late nights at the office. Grace threw herself into her work with renewed intensity, determined to keep her focus on the tasks at hand. But no matter how much she tried to bury herself in the routine, Simon Hayes was never far from her thoughts. Every interaction with him left her with a lingering sense of curiosity and something more, a pull that she couldn't quite define but was undeniably there. Their conversations had taken on a subtle but unmistakable shift, with each exchange layered with an undercurrent of something unspoken. It was a Friday afternoon, and the office was starting to wind down for the weekend. Grace was in the middle of reviewing a project proposal when there was a knock on her door. She looked up to see Simon standing there, a slight smile on his face. "Got a minute?" he asked, his tone light but his eyes serious. Grace nodded, gesturing for him to come in. "Sure. What's on your mind?" Simon walked in and closed the door behind him, taking a seat across from her. "I've been thinking about the work we've been doing on the campaign, and I wanted to discuss some ideas with you, over dinner." Grace blinked, caught off guard by the invitation. "Dinner?" Simon nodded, his expression sincere. "Yes. I figured we could talk through some ideas in a more relaxed setting. Plus, it would be a good opportunity to get to know each other better outside of the office." Grace hesitated, her mind racing. She had always kept a clear boundary between her personal and professional lives, and this invitation threatened to blur those lines. But there was also a part of her that was intrigued by the idea, curious to see where this could lead. Seeing her hesitation, Simon leaned forward slightly, his voice softer. "I understand if you're hesitant, but I think it could be beneficial. No pressure, just dinner." Grace looked at him, searching for any signs of ulterior motives, but all she saw was genuine interest. She knew this could be risky, but there was also something about Simon that made her want to take that risk. After a moment, she nodded. "All right. Dinner sounds good." Simon's smile widened, and Grace couldn't help but feel a flutter of anticipation. "Great. There's a place not too far from here that I think you'll like. How about I pick you up at 7? 7 it is," Grace agreed, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. As Simon left her office, Grace sat back in her chair, her thoughts swirling. She knew she was stepping into uncharted territory, but there was a part of her that was eager to see where this path would take her. That evening, Grace found herself standing in front of her mirror, carefully choosing what to wear. She settled on a sleek, black dress that was both professional and elegant, paired with a simple silver necklace. She wanted to keep things casual, but there was no denying the effort she was putting into her appearance. By the time Simon arrived, Grace was ready. She met him in the lobby of her building, and they exchanged polite smiles before heading out. The restaurant Simon had chosen was a cozy, upscale place with dim lighting and an intimate atmosphere. As they were seated at a corner table, Grace felt a sense of nervousness that she hadn't experienced in years. The conversation started with work, as expected, but it wasn't long before it shifted to more personal topics. Simon asked her about her journey to becoming a manager, and Grace found herself opening up more than she usually did, sharing stories about her early career struggles and the sacrifices she had made along the way. As the night progressed, Grace realized that Simon was not only a good listener but also someone who understood the pressures of success. He shared stories of his own experiences, the expectations placed on him by his family, and his desire to carve out his own path. Grace was struck by the similarities between their lives, despite the difference in their ages and backgrounds. There was a moment of comfortable silence as they finished their meal, both of them lost in thought. Grace sipped her wine, her eyes meeting Simon's across the table. There was a warmth in his gaze that sent a pleasant shiver down her spine. "I have to admit," Simon said, breaking the silence, "I wasn't sure what to expect tonight. But I'm glad we did this." Grace smiled, feeling the tension that had been building between them all night begin to ease. "So am I. It's nice to talk without the pressure of deadlines and meetings." Simon leaned back in his chair, his expression contemplative. "You know, Grace, I've always admired your work ethic and your drive. But tonight, I've gotten to see another side of you, and I have to say, I'm even more impressed. Grace felt a blush creep up her neck, and she quickly looked away, trying to maintain her composure. Thank you, Simon. That means a lot. As they left the restaurant, Simon walked her to her car, the night air cool and refreshing. There was a moment of hesitation as they stood by her car, the city lights casting a soft glow around them. This was nice, Simon said, his voice low. I'd like to do it again sometime, if you're open to it. Grace looked at him, her heart pounding. She knew she was crossing a line, but there was no denying the connection she felt. I'd like that, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Simon's smile was slow and genuine, and for a brief moment, Grace thought he might kiss her. But he simply stepped back, giving her space. Good night, Grace, he said softly. Good night, Simon, Grace replied, her voice steady, despite the storm of emotion swirling inside her. As she drove home, Grace couldn't stop thinking about the evening. She knew she was venturing into dangerous territory, but she couldn't help but feel a thrill of. For the first time in a long while, Grace allowed herself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was room in her life for something more than work. And as she lay in bed that night, her mind kept drifting back to Simon, the way he looked at her, the warmth in his voice, and the promise of something new and unexpected. It was a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to entertain in years, and it both thrilled and terrified her. But as she drifted off to sleep, Grace knew one thing for certain: Simon Hayes was no longer just a colleague. He was becoming something more, and that realization left her with a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in a long time. Click follow for the next chapters.